This time we are going to be discussing what happiness is, why it differs from pleasure, and how to achieve it according to the second master, Al-Farabi. First of all, with regard to happiness, common people often think that pleasure, ladha, is happiness, sa'ada, and we always pursue it because we already consider it the main factor to our psychological survival. Then we make it the goal and the perfection of life so that we understand it as happiness itself. Whereas, according to Al-Farabi, the two things are different. According to him, with deep reflection, we finally know that the pleasure is actually a barrier for us to achieve happiness. Al-Farabi divides pleasure into two kinds. First, sensual pleasure. This kind of pleasure is also known as animal pleasure. This pleasure quickly disappears, like the pleasure of eating delicious food that is only delicious when we are eating it. After that, the pleasure is gone. In addition, this pleasure is also the cause of human misery when humans lose it, because it is its nature that is easily lost. And second, intellectual pleasure. This intellectual pleasure is not as easily lost as the previous one. When we are hungry, we can feel the deliciousness of the food, but when we have been very full, the delicious food has no longer tasted delicious to us. Meanwhile, our curiosity is constantly thirsty for the water of knowledge. The more we drink, the more we feel enjoy, and our curiosity never feels full. Moreover, this intellectual pleasure confirms our human nature. Hence, Al-Farabi suggests that humans should pursue this intellectual pleasure. The ultimate end every human being longs for is happiness, as-sa'adah. Everyone wants to achieve it, and indeed, to achieve happiness is human perfection. Perfection doesn't need explanation anymore because it is the pinnacle of clarity for humans. The essence of perfection is nothing but the highest good. It means that happiness is the highest good. Al-Farabi emphasizes that humans always desire to achieve perfection, in which happiness is the goal of goodness. However, it is important to note that there is some goodness done by humans not as an end, but as a means to achieve another end. For example, taking medicine. Taking medicine is goodness, but it is not an end in itself, but as a means to another end, that is being healthy. Unlike goodness that functions as means, goodness that is performed because of goodness itself or its essence is more perfect than goodness that is performed to achieve other things than goodness itself. Even though the good that is performed because of the essence of goodness is sometimes also performed for other ends. For instance, studying. We sometimes seek knowledge because of the goodness of its essence, not because we want to get something else. But sometimes we also seek knowledge because we want to get something else. For instance, to defeat our rival in a debate. Not goodness in its essence, so this means goodness that functions as a means. According to Al-Farabi, the goodness that is done because of the essence of goodness itself, not other than it, is the most perfect and supreme goodness. This most perfect goodness is characterized by a state when we reach it, we no longer need anything other than it. Thus, Al-Farabi defines happiness as the good that is sought for because of its essence. Al-Khair al-Matlub li-dhati. Happiness is not at all sought to get something else with that happiness. Behind it, there is nothing greater that man can achieve than happiness. It, according to Al-Farabi, is the reason for human existence. He states that God created us to achieve happiness, to achieve our ultimate perfection. And the goal of our life is none other than happiness. For Al-Farabi, anything that can help a person achieve his happiness is good, and vice versa. Anything that obstructs a person from achieving his happiness is evil. Happiness becomes possible when one's soul has reached perfection, in which it doesn't need material substance to exist. One needs not only to understand and be aware of happiness, but also desire and strive to achieve happiness and make it the goal of life. If one's desire for happiness is weak and one's goal in life is not happiness, the result is evil. In addition to good morals that are embedded in the actions and characteristics of our souls, sharpness of mind can also give birth to happiness when it has become a habit. So both sharpness of mind and good morals are human virtues. Humans can achieve certain morals through habits. So our habits determine our morals, either it's good or bad. In other words, getting used to good character brings us to virtue and perfection. In this respect, good character, according to Al-Farabi, results from a moderate attitude. Courage, for example, is a good character that results from a moderate attitude. Between being too much to face something which gives birth to recklessness and not daring to face something which gives birth to cowardice is the middle or moderate attitude. Then how to achieve happiness according to Al-Farabi? According to him, a person will achieve happiness both in the world and in the hereafter if he fulfills four virtues, namely theoretical virtues, intellectual virtues, moral virtues, and practical arts. First, theoretical virtues, namely the sciences. The aim of the theoretical virtues is to embrace a definite understanding of all things. These virtues are primary knowledge or first premises. To reach a definite understanding, one must observe the conditions of the first premises and their order. At this stage, one investigates the principle of being of animals, rational animals or humans, physical principles, soul, intellect, and intelligibles. One can't stop there. He must continue to seek other higher principles which transcend the physical realm, namely the metaphysical. This means that knowing the natural principles, according to Al-Farabi, is not enough to make a person achieve happiness. However, Al-Farabi asserts that even though one has obtained other higher principles, there are still other principles that are needed, viz. Intellectual and rational principles. Unfortunately, a basic understanding of intellectual principles is not sufficient for one to attain happiness. This is where one needs to be directly involved and labor with these intellectual principles. In Al-Farabi's view, these intellectual and rational principles require a person to join other human beings, since an individual cannot achieve the highest perfection if isolated from his social life. In other words, for Al-Farabi, outside the framework of political association, a person will find it difficult to achieve happiness. From this association, political science and science of human emerge. The science of humans serves to examine the purpose for which humans were created in the world. Al-Farabi explains that one must understand the first premises in these sciences, which are metaphysical. It means that one has to understand and investigate every being in this genus until one reaches a being which has no principles at all, but is itself the first principle of all beings. Then after understanding this being that has no defect at all, one should investigate the effect this being has on other beings, which then comes to the knowledge of the ultimate causes of the beings. Having known the first cause, one should investigate things that are good, noble, and virtuous. These things are useful for getting happiness. These are called deliberative virtues, the second of the virtues required for happiness. With deliberative virtues, a person also knows the ignoble, evil, vice, and things that can obstruct a person from achieving happiness. According to Al-Farabi, such matters are studied in political science. He defines political science as knowing the things by which the citizens of cities attain happiness through political association. In Al-Farabi's view, in contrast to political science, the theoretical sciences only include the intelligibles, which do not vary at all. The deliberative virtue, according to Al-Farabi, is that by which one finds what is most useful for virtuous ends. Good or bad ends are determined by the way the person achieves those ends. Al-Farabi stated, the deliberative faculty is most perfect when it discovers what is most useful for the attainment of these ends. The ends may be truly good, may be evil, or may be only believed to be good. If the means discovered are the most useful for a virtuous end, then they are noble and fair. If the ends are evil, then the means discovered by the deliberative faculty are also evil, base, and bad. And if the ends are only believed to be good, then the means useful for attaining and achieving them are also only believed to be good. As for the deliberative faculty by which one discovers what is most useful for an evil end, it is not a deliberative virtue but ought to have other names. However, without possessing the moral virtues, the third of the virtues required for happiness, one cannot possess the deliberative virtues, because one who wants goodness for himself or others must have a virtuous moral character. and virtuous moral character must contain the deliberative virtue that precedes it. Every time the deliberative virtue is more perfect, moral virtues will also be more perfect. The fourth virtue, namely the practical arts, is the implementation of moral virtues with real actions and habituation of these actions. Thus, theoretical virtues, deliberative virtues, moral virtues, and practical arts, in Al-Farabi's view, cannot be separated. As Al-Farabi himself said, nations and citizens of cities attain earthly happiness in the first life and supreme happiness in the life beyond when four human things are met: theoretical virtues, deliberative virtues, moral virtues, and practical arts. I'll see you soon.